Welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Marietta, Georgia, this Sunday, July the 5th, 2020. Oh my, I might say it feels a bit sultry this morning, a bit hot and humid. But here we are together again. So get comfortable, turn on that window fan, and get settled in. My name is Ed Cosper, and I'm a member of the worship team, and I sing in the choir. Emerson is a non-creedal congregation. We welcome a wide variety of theological and spiritual beliefs, and we honor the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person. You are welcome. You are welcomed here. A special welcome to those visiting for the first time and for those returning after an absence. We hope you are nourished in heart and mind by our worship service today. Our guest speaker today, Reverend Charlotte Arsenault, has come home to Emerson UU after one of those absences. She was born and raised in Marietta, Georgia, and completed her internship here at Emerson. She currently serves as a minister in the Georgia Mountains UU Church in Dahlonega and is chaplain at Hospice of Northeast Georgia Medical Center. She lives in Gainesville with her husband, Leo, and two children, Lila and Nolan. Reverend Arsenault's message this morning is titled, A Love Letter to Rebels. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Charlotte home. And now, with a little help from my new friend, we'll have our chalice lighting. These words are adapted from Oberlin UU Fellowship in Oberlin, Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace. We light this chalice to find love for each other. We light this chalice to find faith in ourselves and also to be welcoming to whomever we meet and to be kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together.
Good morning. As Ed shared with you, I am Reverend Charlotte Arsenault. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am filling your pulpit twice this month while my wonderful colleague, your minister, Reverend Deborah, is enjoying some time away. About the only way I could be more delighted to be with you this morning is if I were able to see your lovely faces in person. Today, as Ed shared, I'm going to be sharing a message with you about rebels, about the heretics, those that refuse to be silenced or to take a passive role when justice is calling them. Luckily for us, we find folks like this in our own faith's history, our country's history, as well as in our friends and neighbors today. And with any luck, we will find the traits of rebels in those that come after us. Let us begin our service by joining Kathy Middleman in singing our opening hymn entitled, Building a New Way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way.
Thank you, Kathy, for leading us in song. Good morning. I'm Mary Nell McLaughlin, a member of our Emerson Pastoral Care Team. We're available with a listening ear to support you during challenging times. Contact us anytime through pastoral care at pastoralcare@emersonuu.org. At this time in our service, we pause to share personal joys and sorrows of our Emerson community. We encourage you to email us your joy or sorrow through pastoralcare@emersonuu.org to be included in the upcoming Sunday service. Each Sunday, we light our vigil bowl candle. The candles are behind me, they're already lit. It represents the light of hope for peaceful resolution of conflicts on our planet. And it honors the dedicated people who serve us, especially on the front lines fighting COVID-19 and in the efforts to stop racial injustice. Today, I share these sorrows with you. From Ginger White, the family was all together to say goodbye to my sweet sister, Myra Jager, who passed peacefully this week. I'm grateful to the Roanoke UU Church and Minister who helped us do a memorial service for Myra that she would have loved. From Colleen Radbill. Colleen Radbill's 91-year-old mother, Marie, is hospitalized in Florida with the COVID-19 virus. Please send prayers and healing thoughts for her. From Linda Moot, these are her own words. My breast cancer returned in January. I have had a second round of chemo and a second surgery. The pathology report showed that the surgery did not get all of the cancer, and it is also in the blood vessels. I will go to the Cleveland Clinic for some specialized radiation treatment and be there for 6 weeks. When I returned, we are looking at a third round of chemo. Positive thoughts and energy are very much appreciated. From Kathy Tomlin. Our Emerson family is saddened by the June 16th death of Roger Comstock, a founder of the Mountain Retreat and Learning Center and Unitarian Universalist leader who has served as a district executive and a board representative. Roger was a caring person who positively impacted the lives of thousands of Unitarian Universalists. And I must say, including me, he was a friend and mentor. We know there are joys and sorrows left unspoken. So please feel free to speak aloud the name of anyone you hold closely in your heart this morning. Now, let us send our heartfelt intentions to people everywhere by offering the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. The words are printed in your order of service. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May they be free from harm or suffering. May they be well in body, heart, and mind. May they be at peace. Blessed be. Now, Reverend Charlotte will give a story for all ages.
Thank you, Mary Nell. Well, I brought my Wonder Box with me this morning. I'm so grateful that we get to open it together now because I've been hearing some really funny noises from it since the beginning of our service today. So I need a drum roll. Can you roll your fingers like that? You ready? Goodness, there are a few things in here, but I think I know what's been making the noise. What is this? This butterfly needed to escape. So we'll let it go over here. There are a few more things in here. Looks like a tree of some sorts. Maybe a Lego tree. And looks like a moon made of Play-Doh. A butterfly, a tree, and a moon all together. I know what it means. It was a riddle at first, but I figured it out. I think it means I need to share the story of Julia Butterfly Hill. Julia Butterfly Hill is a woman who climbed up a 180-foot tree, a redwood tree, and lived there for 738 days. That's just over 2 years. Can you even imagine it? Julia climbed the tree one day because she heard that a logging company wanted to tear the tree down to make room to build a building. The redwood tree was 1,500 years old. I don't know anything that's 1,500 years old. Can you think of anything? Julia thought it would be so sad to tear the tree down to make room for a building. So she made up her mind and climbed up the tree. She brought food and water and a sleeping bag, and she built small platforms or decks to live on. She says that when the wind blew really hard or there were big storms, it could be pretty scary that high up in the sky on a swaying tree. She eventually named the tree Luna. Does anyone know what Luna means? All you Harry Potter fans surely know this one. It means moon. Julia stayed on Luna's branches for 2 years, making it impossible for the logging company to cut the tree down. And eventually, the company reached an agreement with Julia. And in exchange for her coming down from Luna, they agreed to leave the tree and all the trees within 200 feet of her standing. And as of now, Luna is still doing very well. So, what do you think that we can learn from Julia and Luna's story? I think if you feel strongly that there is something happening in our world that is wrong, and you have the chance or the opportunity to do something about it, whether it's climbing a tree, cleaning up the ocean, standing up to a bully, or raising your voice at a protest, your actions can make a difference. You could be like Julia and save a 1,500-year-old redwood tree. So that's all I have for our time for all ages today. So let's sing our song of dedication together.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we promise to each other.
For our time of meditation today, I'd ask that you please join me in a moment of prayer, followed by a time of silence. For those who seek order above justice, negative peace over positive peace, who wring their hands at untidiness and worship at the altar of conformity, we lift our voices in prayer. In their name, we bring blessings to the rebels, the radicals, the shaker-uppers, and the troublemakers. We give thanks for the revolutionaries, the insubordinates, even the mutinous. We share our gratitude for those who do not always obey, who raise hell and carry on, who color outside of the lines. We hope to live our lives beside or to become ourselves the rabble-rouser, the reformer, and especially the heretic. And may we spend whatever hope we have left to nurture a new generation of renegades, unwilling to accept the status quo, unwilling to let the call of justice go unheard or unanswered. May we follow their lead and learn to listen to the margins. May it be so. Let us take a moment of silence to privately reflect, pray, meditate, or simply practice being present in this moment. Amen, and blessed be. We are lucky enough today to have a beautiful rendition of John Lennon's song, Imagine, played by Bruce King and Jeffrey Jacoby as our anthem today. That was lovely. Thank you all for sharing your talents for music. I'd like to share a reading before we begin our sermon, and I have faith that you will forgive me for not including it in your order of service. It is an excerpt from Letter from Birmingham City Jail, King's Call to Direct Nonviolent Action in Alabama. He writes, these are his words. I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. End quote. It ain't always easy being a PK. That's preacher's kid to you non-PKs out there. And it can be particularly difficult being a Unitarian Universalist PK around the subject of MLK. You see, Lila, my 8-year-old daughter, received a bit of reading comprehension homework for MLK Day earlier this year that outlined King and his legacy in a truly watered down, but seemingly age-appropriate way. And instead of being that normal parent who simply helped answer the questions based on the one-page summary, she and my 12-year-old niece were treated to a long, likely not age-appropriate, discussion of King's true legacy. One of the biggest surprises for them was when I told them that King had been arrested 29 times during his very short life. The shock and confusion was written all over their faces when they exclaimed, "But jail is for people who break the law. If MLK was a hero, why did he break the law?" Well, you can see it now, can't you? That I cannot be held responsible for the 2 hours that followed. After all, they had laid the path to my soapbox so smoothly, I was almost ashamed of the glee with which I skipped down it to ascend my soapy throne. The conversation went something like this. Not all people who go to jail are bad. And sometimes rules and laws must be broken if it's in the pursuit of justice. Our faith tells us that sometimes that's the right thing to do. They followed up with, "Do you know anyone who's been arrested?" "Yes," I answered. "Many of Mama's friends and colleagues have been arrested doing the right thing." "Have you ever been arrested, Mom?" "No, but if I thought something was right deep in my heart, I would be okay going to jail for it." "You would?" they yelled. Yes. Though they're far from new to discussions around racism, those youngins are now thoroughly versed in the history of white supremacy, voter suppression, the Selma to Montgomery March timeline, the role of students in SNCC and grassroots movements, Rosa Parks, Jimmy Lee Jackson, UU civil rights history, and how racism has evolved and is still present in our everyday lives. They're beginning to understand as best as they can that progress almost always requires sacrifice by those who believe in its cause. And hopefully in time, they'll find a voice inside them that whispers, You can do that too. You can raise your voice and sacrifice in the name of justice. That's how we entered into MLK weekend earlier this year, and some rehashing was done this weekend over the 4th of July. But for most of the US, celebrations of King's legacy happen with a day of service, a day of communal investment, of appreciating how far we've come as a nation and recognizing how much further there is yet to travel. With each year that passes, though, many in our country forget more and more details of King's reality, however. Like how the majority of Americans branded him as dangerously radical during his lifetime. That following the Voting Rights Act, as he began to speak out on poverty as a form of violence, he grew ever more despised as a leader. We remember his "I had a dream" speech, but forget to mention that he was spied on by the FBI. We remember his sharp suits and handsome tie, but overlook that he was reviled by both the Southern and national governments. We love to hear the familiar cadence of his voice when he preaches, but do not mention that he faced threats against his family and a bombing of his home. We remember that clergy walked beside him in Selma, but disregard the verbal, spiritual, and physical abuse by white religious leaders across this country. We honor his commitment to nonviolent protest, but refuse to name the violence of white supremacy that murdered him at 39 years old. As that same white supremacy bubbles to the surface again with a rise in violence against people of color and in anti-Semitic hate crimes, as we watch untamable fires, record-breaking floods, and devastating earthquakes rip our planet apart, as we live with continuously growing income inequality and a justice system that criminalizes the poor, the desperate, and those with darker skin, we must ask ourselves what honoring King's legacy looks like the other 364 days a year in this time, in this place. I've come to believe that if we wish to do the legacy of our civil rights leaders real honor, that yes, we continue to do the service work, the work of reflection and dreaming that has become traditional on these days, because without reminders of community and without vision work, what comes next will be impossible. But after the service work wraps up and our discussions of King simmer out, I believe we must put intention into educating the next generation on how to be rebels. Lyricist E.Y. Yarborough once said, "All of the heroes of tomorrow are the heretics of today." So if we wish to have even a spark of hope to carry forward the work left for us and meet the demands of this new and changing world, I believe we must raise a generation of rebels and heretics capable of overturning the systems of greed, corruption, hatred, and inaction that we currently have in place. We must teach them how to use their power, their voices, and influence for justice and equality, how to be firm in their convictions, to be steadfast in their beliefs when it is difficult, even painful to do so, to find their ways around stumbling blocks and brick walls so they learn to never give up. I say we teach them how to be stubborn and wily and fill them to the brim with hope. Hope that better days are on the horizon because of their work in the name of justice. And when they stumble, when they come to us bleary-eyed and exhausted from the work, may we hold them close to us. Tell them it's okay to rest their bones a while, and then feed their souls with the stories of the rebel heretics that changed this world before them. Let us tell them of Greta Thunberg, Harriet Tubman, Jackson Pollock, Gloria Steinem, Nelson Mandela, and Laverne Cox. Let us explain that there is no one way to do the work, that each of these rebels found their own style of advocacy for their causes. Let us remind them that they will eventually get it wrong. Let's tell them when we got it wrong too, that they will say and do the wrong thing at least once, but that their weariness, their mistakes, do not give them a pass from doing the work. When they need a boost again, let us ground them in our own faith's history, the history that is their birthright, the DNA of heroism and heresy that flows through their veins. Let us explain that, like many religions, Unitarian Universalism is a faith full of rebels. But in theology, rebels are often called heretics. We'll say the word heresy has been used to other us, to shame us, to put us in our proper places, but our continued existence means it didn't work. Heresy derives from the Greek word meaning to choose, and then evolved to mean someone who chooses a doctrine that is different from the standard. We can share the wise words of Reverend Elaine Beth Perusla, who wrote, "Unitarians and Universalists have always been heretics, not because we desire to be rebellious, but because we want to choose our faith, because we question established and dominant standards. We've historically chosen religious freedom from doctrine and creed. We've questioned those who put their trust in religions which are fixed to an ancient creed formulated centuries ago, fixed to the theology, politics, and sociological conditions of another age and culture. We can teach the next generation to have pride in their heresy, just like the ancestors of our faith. We'll tell them of the story of Arius, and that in 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea was called by Emperor Constantine to clarify the beliefs of the early Christian church and determine what its creed would be. That the need for such a discussion arose out of the controversy of Arianism. Because you see, Arius, a distant relative of Unitarianism, was a brilliantly clever Libyan priest who used poems and songs to teach his understandings of Jesus as fully human rather than divine. He insisted God was one, a Unitarian before such a word existed. Well, he insisted that God was one, and because of that, Arius believed greater emphasis should be placed on Jesus' life and teachings rather than his death and resurrection. This went against his superior, a local bishop who became enraged by what he considered Arius' heretical teachings. Following the outcome of the council, I think we all remember that the agreement was that Jesus was fully human and fully divine, and thus the emergence of Trinitarianism. Arius and his followers were branded heretics and banished from their communities and faith. But they still believed as they were called to, and because of them, our faith lives. And we'll share with them, our youth, that on the Universalist side, Origen, a distant relative of Universalism, argued in the mid-3rd century that a loving Father, the Father that Jesus spoke so beautifully of, would never condemn humans to an eternity in hell. And while it wasn't popular in Origen's lifetime either, this belief in universal salvation was eventually declared a heresy in 544 AD. Universalism persisted, however, in the hearts and minds of brave souls who carried it forward and preached its message of love and forgiveness. And it is because of them our faith lives. And we will assure them of so many others. Speak of King John Sigismund, the first and so far only Unitarian king, and his court minister, Francis David. Sigismund's invited theological debates to occur, and with David's guidance, ultimately declared religious tolerance as the law of the land, saying, "Every orator shall preach the gospel by his own personal conception, at any place, if that community is willing to accept him." Sounds like freedom of the pulpit to me. It's because of Sigismund and David's conviction, their faith in the gift of human reasoning, and hope that peace would prevail with freedom, that our faith lives. There are so many others we can name: Michael Servetus, Margaret Fuller, Joseph Priestley, John Murray, Theodore Parker, Benjamin Rush, Reverend James Reeb, Charles Spear, and Dorothea Dix. Let us say these names so they grow up, our youth, so that they grow up to believe that courage, faith, goodwill, generosity, conviction, and leadership are not absent in their congregations, because our faith's foundations were built on the bravery and rebelliousness of these individuals, as was much of our world. When we nurture the radical rebel side of our UU youth, may we hold up those UUs who are alive now too. People like the Reverend Teresa Isoto, who leads us into discussions of the intersection of theology and disabilities. Or the Reverend Scott Warren, who is teaching us how to do the on-ground work around immigration justice on the Mexico-US border. Or Lena K. Gardner, one of the founders and leaders of Black Lives of UU. Or the Reverend Dr. Tendeka, a theologian, author, and professor who founded the study of affect theology. There's Carl Peters, who, among other things, has been active in the development of religious naturalism. Our faith is not just one for the history books. It is not just about those that have done the historical work of justice, but rather it is alive and kicking, and it needs more of us, passionate, heretical leaders, to keep it that way. Mostly, though, when we educate the next generation to become rebels, I hope we do so with more than just words. I hope we teach them through imperfect but never ceasing examples of our own. May we realize that the next generation needs us to advance the cause of the former generation and the one before that, and on and on. I want them to look at us, at you, at me, and say, wow, my neighbor, my friend's mom, my dad, my grandparent, they did extraordinary things to make this world better. They weren't afraid of sacrifice, hard work, or disorder. They raised hell, they misbehaved, they caused a scene, all for the sake of justice, and they did not stop to apologize for it. My friends, let us not be afraid to be called heretics now, so that they may call us heroes tomorrow. In a world without end, may it be so. Amen. Please join Kathy Middleman in our closing hymn today entitled The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul
The vision of this congregation is to be a beacon of peace, justice, and love. The vision is embodied here, not just in words, but in each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and intention, and the resources that you bring. Together, we make this a community. We hope you will share the joy and responsibility of being stewards to this vision through a monetary contribution to the congregation. Ways to give are being shown on the screen at this time.
We end our service today with a thank you. Thank you, rebels and heretics, for your sacrifice, for the gift of your freedom, your reputation, your family, and your life. You have given one or all of these so that we may worship in a faith like Unitarian Universalism, in a community like Emerson, in a town like Marietta, and a country like this, so that we can appreciate the freedom to worship in whichever way we choose. Though many of our UU ancestors would not necessarily recognize our faith as it exists today, we know they would appreciate the intellectual honesty of our theological dialogue, the heart-centeredness of our worship, and our soul's work to bend humanity further towards justice. You are with us now and always. Ed.
The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world. Our congregational response is these: we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.